Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. My name is Beth Hall and I am an AP Lang teacher from Arkansas. And this week I've been doing YouTube lives on my channel and I wanted to offer a shorter version of that live in case people wanted that condensed information. So day one was annotations. I will leave the links in the description box to both of those videos. We did have a couple of tech problems, but we persevered. Tonight's video was all about thesis statements. So I've got two different activities that I want to tell you about that can be really quick and easy for the beginning of the school year, especially if you're introducing rhetorical analysis. And also tomorrow, if you're watching this the day that it comes out on July 8th, we will be doing a line of reasoning workshop live on YouTube. I've got some activities that I haven't ever shared about before to help you introduce the concept of line of reasoning. So let's go ahead and get started talking about defensible thesis statements. First of all, defensible just means that it can be proven, but on the exam, I think sometimes there might be different standards versus those that we have in our classroom. I've heard teachers say, and I understand why, they say things like, I would never give this a thesis point in my classroom, but on the exam, it would get that point. So what do students need to do? Basically, they need to incorporate a rhetorical choice. It can be a device, which is a noun, something like a metaphor or juxtaposition, or it can be a verb, which is typically what a choice is, something like compares or contrasts, things like that. So basically, we want to have students convey what the writer is doing. Ideally, they'll identify a couple different choices, maybe two or three, and that's what they need to be defensible. They don't get credit for it if they just say the writer makes rhetorical choices. They have to actually specify what those choices are. And ideally, we want to encourage students to use rhetorically accurate verbs. But if they use a noun, that's totally fine. They can also technically say an appeal, like logos, ethos, or pathos, and still get credit on the exam. So again, there might be different requirements in our own classrooms, but on the exam, that's what they're looking for. In my classroom, I require two parts. I require rhetorical choices and what I've been calling MAP, message, argument, or purpose, because that's what they're going to be asked about in the prompt. One of those three things. All passages have a purpose, so that's a pretty good place to start. Also, sometimes they might be asked about the message or argument, so we want to have students be able to identify that as well because it is part of the rhetorical situation. In some prompts, they're going to be given the specific message, argument, or purpose, but usually it's kind of surface level, so it really helps if they're able to rephrase it in their own words, but technically they can use some of the language from the prompt if needed. Sometimes they just tell them message, argument, or purpose, and they don't give them a clue as to what it is. And honestly, sometimes because it's open-ended, that can be helpful for students. So we want them to practice being very specific as well. We don't want them to just say, convey a message. We need to know what that message is. So that's kind of the rundown for what a defensible thesis statement is. I have a couple of videos on my channel that are student-friendly if you're looking for more information about that. So now let's talk about sentence frames. I have a couple videos about thesis statements where I include those sentence frames in there, but basically sentence frames are a great way to help students learn how to write a defensible thesis. I like the sentence frames because students get to plug in the information. They get to identify the speaker, the audience, the choices, the purpose. They can include tone, like an adjective tone word, like in his patriotic speech. They can also include the person's credentials. So sometimes I'll use that as a teaching point to talk about a positive phrases and how we structure our sentence and things like that. So you can actually use it to do a little bit of grammar work if you want to as well. But basically the sentence frames allow students to articulate their ideas and it gives them something to write that's defensible. That way they can spend more time on those body paragraphs. They don't have to struggle to come up with a thesis statement. So I will include a link in the description of this video to a handout for you. And in that handout, I give a couple of sentence frames that you're welcome to use in your classroom. I know a lot of different teachers use variations of these sentence frames and they can be very helpful. And so also in that link, it's a forced copy link, you should also receive some links to some of the activities that I'm going to be talking about next, kind of a breakdown of what they are, and even some links to some templates. So make sure you check out the description box for that handout. So the first activity that I want to tell you about is honestly going to probably seem a little bit anticlimactic. It's simple, but it works. And that is having students write a thesis as their bell work. So usually what I have students do is we read the passage in class and discuss it. And then maybe the next day, they might come in and their bell work is to write a thesis statement. If it's an exam passage, I'll use the exam prompt. If not, I'll just make one of my own. You can just say something like analyze how the speaker makes rhetorical choices to, and then we want to say something about the message, argument, or purpose. So I will time students for like 3 to 5 minutes or so and have them write a thesis statement. In the very beginning of the year, I will provide them with a sentence frame. Before they do this assignment, we will have already gone over how to use the sentence frame and how it works. That way I don't have to answer those questions for the bell work. I will also sometimes give them suggestions for verbs, kind of like a reminder of things we talked about the previous day in class. That way they can start by just plugging stuff in. I don't do this for every passage that we read, but I do it a few times in the first 9 weeks to get them comfortable with it. That way they're writing under a little bit of pressure. My students have said that this activity of just writing a thesis statement helps because by the time they take the exam, they've done it enough that they're able to not have to worry about that thesis point. And also for me, it's a quick and easy grade. I usually give it a completion score. If it's defensible, they get 5 points. But if you want to be a little bit more strict, or as time progresses and students get stronger at it, if you want to kind of change the grading, you might be able to give students full credit if they have strong verbs in message, purpose, or argument. But if they only have like a reference to the choices, but maybe not the message, purpose, or argument, maybe you give 3 out of 5 points or something like that. I set up my grade book by total points, and 5 is kind of the lowest that I have. Essays are 100 points for reference. So if you do your grade book differently, obviously take that into consideration. But these are a really quick and easy completion grade. It's a way for me to give students feedback and kind of see what they're understanding. So do they understand the rhetorical situation? Do they know how to punctuate correctly? Do they understand rhetorical choices? Are they able to use strong verbs? Can they recognize the message, purpose, or argument? So even though they're only writing one sentence, it gives you as the teacher a lot of information, which can be very helpful. And so this could also be an exit ticket if you wanted to do something like that. But I just make a Google question in Google Classroom and they respond there. So that's the first one, is just having students write a thesis statement as bell work. There's more information in the handout linked in the description. The second activity is it defensible? And this one I've talked about in a couple different videos, but I have added a new element to it. So is it defensible is basically a quick activity that you could also do for bell work, where you give students a few different thesis statements and they have to tell you, is it defensible, yes or no? And so this can be a great way to reinforce what is defensible on exam day. You can tailor it to your classroom standards as well. And so I try to throw in at least one that's not, but it's also helpful to show that there is a range of defensible. So something could be defensible, but not particularly strong. It could be defensible and average, or it can be defensible and really strong. So you can kind of see a range there. In the handout that is linked in the description, you'll see a link to the database, which is a list of thesis statements that I've put together for you that you are just welcome to copy and paste into the assignment templates if you want to. That way you can kind of do your own thing. And there is a Google Docs version of the templates in case you want to copy and paste it and assign it to your students. You can make your own activity. And there's also a Google Slides version if you prefer that one. You can also add a secondary component to this, and after students decide if the thesis statements provided are defensible, you could have them write their own. So that could be a way to extend the activity a little bit as well. That way you're incorporating the 2 different skills. Can they recognize if it's defensible or not, just to reinforce that concept, and then can they write one? The new part that I have added is that I have made them self-checking. So I have 5 that I have provided for you in that resource. It should be a forced copy link. We checked the links during the live session tonight to make sure that they work and the settings are good. So you'll have access to a few different ones. I tried to choose a few that I knew were kind of popular. So there's some for Banneker, the Alfred M. Green prompt, Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman, Bush 9/11, and I'm trying to remember what the 5th one was, but there's 5 in there. And basically what happens is students are presented with the thesis statement and there's a box where they get to type in yes or no, is it defensible? If they are correct, then it will turn green. If their answer is incorrect, it will turn red. You're welcome to adjust the sentences as you want to. I am working on this for question 1 and question 3. So once those are ready, I will definitely let people know. The fastest way to find out about stuff like that is to sign up for my email list. So I send out weekly or bi-weekly emails during the school year, and I send out tips and freebies and reminders of different teacher chats and other events that I'm hosting. So definitely, if you're not subscribed to that, make sure that you sign up for that. And if you're watching this video and it comes out live in the next week or two, I will be sending out a few more emails than normal because I've got a couple big things happening that I'm going to be sharing about. So I will let people know about that in the next couple days. Another way to find out about stuff like this is to follow me over on Instagram. If you're an Instagram user, I try to go on Instagram stories a couple times a week and show what I'm working on in my classroom, or show some different activities that I'm working on. That way I can get feedback from teachers and share free resources with you as well. So anyway, the is it defensible activity is also super quick. I like the self-checking component because it's a great way to do a completion grade, and it is kind of new and fun. And those self-checking resources are ready to go. So hopefully I've saved you a little bit of time and stress as you are preparing for the beginning of the school year. And as I said before, this video is the condensed version. If you want to watch the full live, which is much longer, then I will link that video in the description box below. I will also leave a link to tomorrow's YouTube live where we'll be during which we'll be talking about line of reasoning activities. I hope to see you there.